Welcome to Thelina. Sometimes a life feels heavy not because it never began, but because it was postponed. We often stop at the place where we say, it's too late now. Yet time does not close the door. It only grows quiet, and we often mistake that quiet for absence. This series was created to remind us that sentences beginning with, "If only it had been earlier," are actually hidden doors opening into today, not to provoke a sense of being late, but gently to loosen it. Because some people do not start late. They simply give themselves permission late. And some do begin, but their voices reach the world much later. On this journey, we will listen to those who dared to begin, those who were reborn at ages they thought were too late, those who did not fit into their time, and those who left quiet traces. We will not tell stories of great success. There will be no loud motivation here. The only thing present will be this question: what if I had started today? If this question stirred even a slight movement within you, then this series has already begun speaking to you. And perhaps the only thing you need to know is this: the time you think is over is still time. Before the video begins, if the Series 1 Create resonates with you, with your support we can reach more hearts. Subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment mean a great deal to me. Thank you in advance. Now, let's begin this new journey together. The mathematics of time. They once asked a 100-year-old Japanese woman, "How do you evaluate a century-long life?" She didn't think for long. She didn't speak of great regrets. Nor did she list missed opportunities. She simply said, "If only I had started playing the violin at 60. I would have been playing for 40 years by now." This sentence holds no blame, no self-pity, only a calm realization. Because when people look back, what they notice most is not what they failed to do, but what they postponed. What stands out in this story is not age, not 60, not 100. What truly strikes is the woman's mathematics. Seeing time not as a loss, but as accumulated possibility. When we say, "It's too late," what we often mean is this: carrying this dream today feels too heavy. Yet time does not judge dreams. Age does not reject talent. What stops us is most often other people's gaze, the quiet rules of society, or the growing collection of "it won't work" sentences within us. This woman may never have played the violin, but that is not the real point. The real point is this: if she had started at 60, she would have lived 40 years. In contact with something, maybe she would have played poorly. Maybe no one would have listened. But every day, her hands would have searched for a sound. And that search is as valuable as life itself. Sometimes starting is not about producing a result. Sometimes starting is the simplest way to say, "I am here," to life. The moment a person says, "I'm too late," they are still within time. They just forget it. Because while the mind speaks with the past, it silences the present. Yet today is still open for beginning. Maybe not the violin, maybe writing, maybe learning, maybe simply trying. This chapter exists to remind you of this. If you started something today, years from now, you might remember this day with gratitude. And perhaps the most honest question is this: the thing I say, "if only," about, is it actually still possible? The answer is often closer than you think. Tolstoy's bicycle. Tolstoy was one of the greatest figures in world literature. He had written War and Peace and given Anna Karenina to the world. His name was already etched into history. And yet, at the age of 67, he decided to learn how to ride a bicycle. Not for a spectacle, not as a challenge, simply to learn. Imagine a man of that age trying to ride a bicycle. There is the possibility of falling, the risk of losing balance, the looks that say, "Is that appropriate at this age?" But for Tolstoy, none of this was the real issue, because he did not see learning as a skill, but as a way of living. His words are not accidental. A person grows old the day they stop learning. This chapter is not about age. It is about curiosity. Because most people do not stop learning after a certain age. They stop giving themselves permission to learn. It doesn't suit me anymore. It's too late for that. That's for the young. These sentences are not truths. They are invisible limits set by the mind. When Tolstoy rode a bicycle, he was not trying to prove something to the world. I can still do it. He did something far quieter. He reminded himself that he was still open. Learning is not merely acquiring a new skill. Learning is refusing to consider oneself complete. Some people narrow their lives as they grow older. They reduce their space. They cut down possibilities. Others do the opposite. As they age, they ask, what else might still be possible? This is why Tolstoy's bicycle matters. Because this is not a story about sport. It is a story about the soul remaining flexible. This chapter whispers to you, if there is still curiosity within you, age is irrelevant. Perhaps today you have given up on something, saying, this is no longer for me. But perhaps what you abandoned did not leave you. You left it. And perhaps the only question worth asking is this. When did I stop learning? The answer to that question is the most honest place to begin. Quietly opening doors. Anna Mary Robertson, better known as Grandma Moses. She spent her life farming. Fields, household chores, long and quiet days. No one ever told her, there is a painter inside you. She never went looking for one either. When arthritis in her hands made it impossible to continue her usual work, she picked up a brush one day. She was 76 years old. She had no grand dream, no goal set before her. She simply tried to express herself in another way. Grandma Moses's paintings were not technically perfect. There was no perspective, no academic rules, but there was something in them. A life lived. Those who looked at her paintings saw not so much an artist as the quiet witness of someone who had watched life for a very long time. What is striking is this. She never said, I will become a painter. She never asked, am I too late? She simply took one step with what she had in her hands at that moment. Years later, in her 80s, her works began to be exhibited. Her name became known. But that is not the essence of the story. The essence is this. Some doors do not open with a big decision, but with a small permission. We often look for major justifications to begin. Am I talented? Is it worth it? What will come of it? Yet sometimes the only thing needed is this. May I look at this for a moment? Grandma Moses's story is not about starting late. It is about giving oneself permission late. Some people do not suppress things throughout their lives. They simply never touch them. And what we do not touch waits quietly. This chapter wants to remind you of this. Some doors inside you are not locked. They just have not been pushed for a very long time. Perhaps there is something in your life you set aside as not me, but which is simply a part of you that has not yet been called. And perhaps the question worth asking is this. If I gave myself a small permission today, which door might begin to open? Sometimes a life changes, exactly like this. The unyielding voice. Some people do not start late, but they are asked to give up many times. There are no big names in this chapter. No clear dates, no shining moments. What is told here is something more familiar. Being rejected again and again. A file is prepared, a text is written, an idea is shared, and the responses are usually the same. Not suitable. We're not considering this at the moment. We suggest you take a different direction. The first time, a person pauses. The second time, they doubt. The third time, the voice begins to fade. This is where most people give up. Because giving up is often not about being tired, but about being alone. This chapter looks directly at that moment of loneliness. At the voice no one sees. No one applauds, yet still speaks quietly from within. Some callings are not loud. They do not shout. They do not insist. They simply do not fall silent. And sometimes a person falls into this illusion. If no one wants it, then I must be doing something wrong. Yet history whispers something else. Many things were found too quiet when they were first heard. This chapter is not about success. It is about not silencing the inner voice too quickly. Because giving up often looks reasonable. Continuing, on the other hand, can seem like a devotion without cause. But some devotions are not about outcomes. They are about identity. Sometimes a person continues something, not to gain something, but to avoid losing themselves. Perhaps you, too, stopped at some point in your life. You said, "I've tried enough." You said, "This is enough." These sentences are not wrong, but they are not always true. This chapter whispers this to you. If something is still calling you from within, the silence outside may not be the final answer. And perhaps the most honest question is this: when did I start giving up on myself? By looking only at results. Some voices do not live by applause, but by loyalty, and sometimes, continuing, is meaning in itself. Those who didn't fit their time. Franz Kafka did not see himself as a great writer while he was alive. On the contrary, he was often disturbed by what he wrote. He found his texts incomplete, flawed, insufficient. So much so that before his death, he made a clear request to his closest friend. He asked that his writings be burned. What we call Kafka today is an echo he never witnessed with his own eyes. His novels, stories, thoughts, all were published after his death. And the world began to hear his voice only when he was no longer there. This story is not about starting late. Kafka started early. He wrote relentlessly. But this story is about something else. Some voices do not fit into their own time. The era Kafka lived in was not ready for his texts. The confinement, the alienation, the systems that seemed meaningless. They were too dark, too strange for those days. Today, they feel familiar. That is why Kafka's story tells us this. If what you do finds no response now, it does not mean it is worthless. Sometimes something does not arrive late. It simply arrives early. We often mistake invisibility for failure, yet invisibility can sometimes be nothing more than untimeliness. Kafka did not receive applause while writing. He was not celebrated, but he did not stop writing by saying, "It leads nowhere." Because for him, writing was a necessity, independent of outcomes. This chapter is dedicated to the unseen, to those who do not receive a return for what they do, to those who continue, despite the inner voice that says, "So it was all for nothing." Kafka's story does not offer comfort, but it straightens one's posture. It says, if the world does not hear you now, it does not mean you should be silent. Some traces are not visible, while their owner is still there. Some meanings take shape over time, And sometimes a person's legacy does not fall into their own life, but into the lives of others. Perhaps today you feel that what you are doing is pointless. Perhaps you are unseen. Perhaps you are misunderstood. This chapter whispers this to you. Not everything has to bear fruit in the time that belongs to you. And perhaps the question worth asking is this: am I giving up on myself because my time has not yet come? Some lives are not late. They simply take longer. Closing. There is still time. In this series, we did not try to tell you this: you are not late, because sometimes that sentence does not lighten the weight within a person. Instead, we whispered this: you are still inside time. Some wished they had started at 60. Some wanted to learn at 70. And some were never heard while they lived. Yet the traces they left found meaning in the lives of others. What they all had in common was this: time did not behave the way they expected, but they did not completely miss it either. Perhaps while watching this series, you paused somewhere to think. Perhaps a sentence left a gentle ache within you. Perhaps there was a moment when you said, "Me too." This ache is not a lack. It is a sign that you can still make contact. Life does not always call out loudly. Sometimes it simply waits. And when you are ready, a small movement is enough. Like picking up a violin. Like opening a notebook. Like asking yourself one honest question. As we end this series, we are not suggesting big decisions. We are simply reminding you of this: starting is not always a revolution. Sometimes it is just giving yourself a small permission. And perhaps today, for the thing you call, if only, a door may open for the first time. Because the time you think is over is often just quiet. And if you are still here, time is still here too. Remember, life is whispering to you. When you dare to listen to your heart, paths begin to open. Until our next meeting, stay with light in your heart. I am Felina, a fellow traveler walking toward the same dream, under the same sky, with you.